Dear friends, it has been 900 days since our last Congress in Zagreb, when President Dole, my great predecessor, handed over his duties and responsibilities to me. And of course, Joseph is here with us, as always. Joseph, "900 days that shook the world." While you congratulated me on my election, none of us had the slightest idea that in some remote city of Wuhan, an epidemic was just breaking out. An epidemic which would soon turn our world upside down, claim more than 6 million lives, and with long-term consequences, which are still not fully known. When I was taking office, the UK left the European Union after a long process, and Australia was hit by the deadliest forest fires in its history, yet another warning of climate catastrophe. Later in time, we witnessed the most unbelievable events. Global anti-racism protests after the murder of George Floyd, storming of the US Capitol, the end of Hong Kong's autonomy, the Belarusian Revolution, the Americans' capitulation to the Taliban in Afghanistan, the end of Merkel's era in Germany, and 90 days ago, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The world is on the brink. The prospect of a third world war has become ghastly real. And the threat of a nuclear conflict is not only confined to theoretical debates. This assertion that the world has found itself on the brink is not just a rhetorical term. The dramatic nature of the situation we are all in stems from a rapid acceleration of events, many of which are unpredictable. When Nassim Nicholas Taleb wrote his book about the black swans, that is about highly improbable events which happen anyway from time to time and lead to disastrous consequences, he could not have known that the beginning of the third decade of the 21st century would be dominated by the whole flocks of black swans, just like a disaster movie. But our reality is not a film. We shouldn't watch it as if we were only spectators. And the vision of catastrophe is already very real. Let's just imagine for a second that it is Trump who has won the elections, and he did come very close to winning, that the US is no longer in NATO, what Trump had been implying all along, and Putin attacks not only Ukraine, but also Lithuania, Poland, or Romania. Political fiction? Some may say yes, and that I am exaggerating, but then, did anyone predict 3 years ago the events we are observing today? Hasn't reality turned out to be even less probable than the scenario of the fourth season of Stranger Things? It is precisely in a historic time like this when we plainly see who is who, whose side we are on, and what values we represent. It is also equally plain to see how important are determination, mobilization, and courage. How crucial are clear intentions and unambiguous attitudes. Both the pandemic and the war in Ukraine, but also the stance vis-à-vis China, Brexit, or the American elections, have revealed a deep division of the world. But it is Russia's aggression that has particularly sharpened the image of politics and shown with full force the nature of this division. And as always in such dramatic moments in history, it is crystal clear how obvious and simple this division is, even if the games of interest may be complicated and unobvious. Because as far as interests are concerned, compromises are fully justified. Yet in confrontation with the fundamental values, there is no room for compromise. Today, I want to repeat with full conviction what I already told you in Helsinki and in Zagreb, and what, in my opinion, should be our motto. We go into politics to defend the truth from lies, to defend victims against their aggressors, to promote order and peace among nations, to defend a united Europe against nationalisms, democracy against authoritarianism, freedom against tyranny, and to defend the rule of law from the lawlessness of people in power. Putin's attack on Ukraine, burning cities and towns, the raping of women and children, murdering civilians, forcibly deporting thousands of people deep into Russia, all this cannot leave anyone indifferent. Today, Europe should not debate on how to save Putin's face, but only about how to help Ukraine win this ruthless war. Because this is our war. Right now, it is fought far away from Lisbon, Paris, or Rotterdam. But the rockets and bombs are already falling close to the Polish border, 15 kilometers. And the aggressor does not even hide the fact that the attack on Ukraine is a confrontation with the whole of the West, with America, the European Union, and with NATO. Therefore, full engagement on the side of Ukraine, of all of us, is not only our moral duty. It is the to be or not to be moment of Western civilization and our fundamental values. Ukraine is fighting also in our name, in our interest, and it is high time that all Europeans finally get this. Also, each and everyone in the European People's Party should remember the words of Wilfried Martens, that Christian democracy is not and should not be a party of gas and oil. The war for our values is fought on many fronts, also inside our political family. There is no lack of advocates of Putin and of his political philosophy here in Europe. Today it is clear to see how important was our decision to say goodbye to Viktor Orban a consistent defender of the Kremlin and promoter of a new illiberal democracy, which is de facto a new version of an authoritarian state. And it was not an easy decision. It took me many months to finally convince our leaders to do that. And if not for Manfred Weber's help and determination, we would be facing a really difficult problem today. Unfortunately, I was not able to persuade some leaders to change EU energy policy and close the Nord Stream 2 project. 8 years ago, when Putin invaded Crimea and part of Donbas, I called for the creation of the Energy Union. I was the Polish Prime Minister then. Energy Union and for the common European purchases of gas to make us independent from Russian deliveries. Unfortunately, to no effect. Today, we are coming back to those ideas, and even if it is a bit too late, it is important that we should be very determined to realize them. The European People's Party should be at the forefront of European renewal in the spirit of our fundamental values. A firm and univocal support for Ukraine is the first and the most important test of our credibility. We must help Ukraine win this war, and we must, with equal determination, defend our values, first and foremost the rule of law, human rights and civil liberties, also against our internal enemies. In all these crucial matters, I could always count on Manfred Weber over the years. You all know him well. I don't need to remind you of how much he has done for the European People's Party and for Europe. But I want to underline one thing. Manfred Weber, with his quiet courage, so typical of him, has always stood on the right side of things. He is a man of compromise, but never when it comes to fundamentals. As for our values, he is principled to the core. But at the same time, he is always open to others. He defends the essential matters, even when he is in minority. He was the one who helped me the most to solve the Fidesz problem. He was the one who had the courage, despite his own political environment, to argue multiple times against such projects as Nord Stream 2. I could also always count on him when it came to the rule of law. There are a lot of politicians who create problems. You know them. Manfred Weber solves them. That is why I fully recommend him as the, I hope, future EPP president from the bottom of my heart, Manfred. Many months ago, I took the decision to return to the Polish politics. We cannot urge others to fight when we are not ready to do that ourselves. The future of Europe, our freedom, our security and our civilization are being decided here and now, also in my country. I am really proud of my compatriots. Despite the disastrous mistakes made by the Polish government, also during the pandemic time. Record high inflation, today 14%. They have, and of course our aggressive neighbors. They have, I mean my compatriots, they have taken into their homes hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian refugees and given them shelter. They have truly demonstrated exceptional solidarity. I want to win the next battle together with them. the battle to restore democratic rules, the rule of law, and the freedom of speech, the battle for a European Poland. Because there is no safe Europe without an independent Ukraine and without a democratic Poland. The best possible ending of my farewell speech will be a letter addressed to you, written by Misha Saakashvili, our old Georgian friend, who is still in prison in Georgia. My dear friends, if you allow me, I will read out this letter to you. My dear friends, from where I am, and despite the pains in my body, I feel the strength of the European People's Party family, my political family. It is always during the darkest hours that our values and our leaders show the way towards a brighter future. Today, this responsibility lies with you. Ukraine needs you. Georgia needs you. Europe is nothing without you. I have devoted all my life to fighting against the evil embodied today by Putin and Ivanishvili that undermines the foundations of our European community: freedom, democracy, and rule of law. Let us not be afraid. Let's fight together, united. History has taught us that the price of our collective renunciation is dramatically expensive. My heart bleeds for the thousands of Ukrainians, my friends, who, weapons in arms, sacrifice their lives in the name of the European dream. If Ukraine falls, many others will follow, starting with my beloved Georgia. We cannot let this happen. I find the strength to overcome my days of suffering thinking about the legacy of my dear friend Wilfried Martens, who welcomed me at the EPP while Russia was already threatening Georgia, or remembering the fight for freedom led by my old friend Donald Tusk. As long as my health will permit, I will not give up, even though it means paying the ultimate price. As Jean Monnet said, I am not pessimistic, I am not optimistic, I am determined. Freedom will prevail and pave the way for a great new epoch. Misha Saakashvili. Thank you very much for everything. Thank you for your attention. All the best, dear friends.